The first coming through from New York as they've officially signed Mac Meltz, who in my eyes was already targeted ahead of CDL Los Angeles, but for whatever reason couldn't be added in time for the event. But it's pretty much all but confirmed he'll be starting in place of Happy moving forward. Mac's been pretty much around since World War II and has been a very well-known player online for the last few years, and was most recently finishing second at CDL launch weekend under Hybrid Black. London as well, post CDL Los Angeles, have announced their newest signing in Nasty. Again, another player most likely being brought in for the starting lineup. It's still rumored that he will be taking the spot of previously rated. Nasty played Champs 2019 under Celtic FC Esports, finished 12th at launch weekend under Train Hard, and then finished second at the London Open, and then most recently in Paris, actually managed to win the Open event for Team War. So some interesting signings for sure, and ones that I'm personally very eager to see, because now and for the future of the online league, it actually makes roster changes a lot easier, and a lot of people aren't going to realize that, because travel no longer gets in the way. Scrimming schedules are already more open than they've ever been. Bringing in young talent, making roster changes are at an all-time high. Now, that's simply everyone's just at home, right? If you want to grab a player and he happens to be playing very well online, very easy to plug him in. Very easy to bring this guy about. It's not about having to time everything out. It's not about trying to be aware of this event that we have going on, trying to be aware of our homestand, all kinds of things. It is much more feasible to make moves happen. Events that would, like I said, normally get in the way of changes or delay player substitutions, it lessens now with the online environment. But in the midst of all these changes and soon to be changes, let's actually go ahead and take a quick look at my current power rankings as of right now. Now, I'll be honest with you, the term power rankings kind of bothers me a little bit. I've been on the record saying a lot about how power rankings at times can be inaccurate based on the definition of them. Reason being is that it's just such a loose term that normally involves specific stats along with little personal opinion. But let me be real with you. This list is strictly personal opinion, right? This is where I see if teams faced off the way that they looked in LA and Atlanta, where I see them at this current moment. We're not yet factoring in online play. This is what we have seen coming into the new online version of the league, which is obviously going to change things up a little bit. As much as we hate to say it, it will change things up nonetheless. So I'm going to kind of go in a little bit of an order here. I'm going to talk about a few teams that I kind of have on my list, who I think has the ability to raise, teams I think have the ability to lower, why I have certain teams placed where I do. Now, I've seen a few people in their power rankings talk about how the first spot is now undecided, right? It could be Chicago based on the way that Atlanta looked in their loss versus Minnesota. It very well could be Empire, as they just won Los Angeles, looking great in the midst of doing so. The reason why I have FaZe where I do is that they are still atop the mountain in my book. They have only struggled with one team so far, and they've handled all the rest. Granted, Chicago and FaZe have yet to play against one another. However, until we see FaZe have problems elsewhere, this is where I see them staying for the near future. Talk about Empire a little bit. As much as I enjoyed their win and felt that did legitimize their decision they made to go with the young talent, right? Illy and Shotzi, especially Shotzi, looked fantastic at the event. I still have them here. A win is a win, but you also have to consider the fact that they still are 0-3 versus Chicago. They're still 0-2 versus Atlanta. And if we're looking on accomplishments so far throughout the season, Dallas, Atlanta, Chicago, they've all got wins so far this season. Now, taking a look a little bit, not too much farther down at Optic Gaming, this may be a little bit shocking for a few people visually, but like I said, this is a team, this is not based on placement so far throughout the year. This is not based on average. This is what I have seen. Just where I internally rank this team at the moment, I loved what I saw from Optic in LA. Despite the small sample size, what we saw was a different looking LA team. I like their chances for the future, and this was a team that I predicted to be very high as the season progressed. I thought that they would be off to a much harder start, or rather a hotter start than they have been so far throughout the league, but they have improved, and what they showed me in a very small sample size, I think is enough for the future. The roles, everything for me, it kind of makes sense. Next, we've got the Florida Mutineers. This is a team that I think has a lot of options right now, given their current circumstance, right? They have 4 guys who all stand a chance of getting 3 spots, in Havoc, Mox, Prasini, and Pharaoh. This team worries me, right, with consistency, but I believe has the ability to lower, has the ability to raise, maybe even depending on the team they put together. There's a lot of teams right now kind of getting rid of that second AR flex. That could be the opportunity for Mox to maybe get the pretty much get knocked outside the door. We talked about with New York. We talk about with London, kind of getting rid of that second AR player. This could be the same thing here for the Florida Mutineers and getting rid of Mox. Time will tell. I liked what I saw from Pharaoh when it came down to LA, and they seem to have a really good relationship with him as of right now. Another team that I want to touch on, which may be a little bit surprising for people because I feel like Paris could really be anywhere, kind of around this particular region. I know I have them a little bit lower than a lot of other people do, but it's just kind of the norm for me as of right now because I don't know how Paris is going to react to all these team changes that are going to come about. We talked about a lot of different rosters they're starting to raise. How does New York start to look? How does Seattle start to look if they end up making a change? How does this new looking Optic Gaming roster affect everyone else's placements or rather power rankings as well? This is a team in Paris that I believe has the ability to go up from here. I just haven't loved what I've seen from them recently. If you take away launch weekend, the only teams that they have beaten are Toronto twice and New York once. And that's it, right? That's the only teams that they have faced off and taken down so far as of yet. And I think that they've looked shaky on core mechanics of the game. I went through and I've watched a few of their matchups, especially versus Toronto, which is their most heavily played game or series up to this point in terms of ones that they have became victorious in. And in those, they look kind of shaky on rotations and hardpoint. They just don't seem to be all there, and I worry maybe in the future about the lack of online leadership. Where does that come from? The SMGs at times have been inconsistent. However, like I said, it just kind of all relies upon how they improve for the future. Also, one major plus that has really taken them down a major notch is domination. This was a team that earlier on in the season looked fantastic on gun runner domination. They start off the season 5-0. You know how many times they've played it since they went 5-0? 0. No one wants to play them on it. And that has been their biggest problem, is not relying on that swing game 3 domination a majority of the time, which was played on Gunrunner. So this team, like I said, I think has the ability to project upwards, also has the ability to go down maybe a little bit as well, depending on how a few teams do. Speaking of one of those teams, New York Subliners. This is a team that at the start of the year was projected to be far higher than this, right? This was a team that many people had in their top 5, but clearly they were not in a great state. Roster changes have obviously been a major talking point for them, whether they want to make the news or not. They have been, with talks of Sensor maybe being added in the starting lineup, the odd addition of someone like Happy, who hasn't played on a main stage since 2017. How does that start to factor in? And I will say I do worry in some ways about the future of accuracy and his ability to be the main AR, because based on stats, he hasn't looked great. Do you kind of blame that on the SMG side of things, or do you kind of blame that on the main AR? I think it can kind of go both ways, but I haven't loved what I've seen from him. I feel like a lot of main ARs, despite maybe a lack of SMG presence, have still been able to put up very, very good numbers. But I like the move of bringing in a young talent like Mac. I think a decent amount of weight does now fall on his shoulders to be a consistent slayer for him. They're bringing this guy in for a reason, and now you kind of have this interesting element of kind of 4 guys who like to play at a faster pace, right? You have Zuma, you have Attach, you have Temp, and now you have Mac. I'm excited to see how this element works out. It's almost definite that he's going to be in that starting lineup, and due to a little bit of gameplay that I've been able to watch, I've been pretty impressed with what I've got to see. But we haven't seen anything yet from them. It's hard to have them higher because we have not watched them play very much at all. Next, and finally, we're going to talk about the Los Angeles Guerrillas. I'm telling you right now, don't sleep on Aches coming back. He holds a lot of cards right now, from salary to bringing up the point of a young team needing leadership. He has had a 3-week period to talk with management at LAG to really zone in on the losses that they had and the ones that they suffered as well. I think Guerrillas made a risky move, right? They absolutely did, bringing in 3 players. That was the biggest roster change, one-time roster change that we have seen so far throughout this year. And obviously, we're close to beating OGLA, but still, they look sloppy throughout the remainder of their tournament. You talk about the composure factor to be up versus OGLA like that. You like to see them close that out. It was a lot of new guys kind of coming in Vivid and Spart. And I like the pieces that they added, and I think that Vivid and Spark can be useful pieces. But I really am under the impression that this is not the last time that we see Aches. I think he makes his way back to the LAG team at some point. Because like I said, 3 weeks, it's a long time. You're dwelling on a loss of which you didn't win any series when it came down to the most recent event. And I think that they're going to dwell on that enough to think, hey, it's time that we add in an older veteran, a guy who can kind of add a lot to the team in terms of communication. Whether you agree with that or not, hey, it's up to you, but I think that probably will take place. Again, those are just where my current rankings lie, solely taking into consideration opinion and not on stats. That is just where I personally see and rank teams, at least as of right now, coming into the online league. But it was a great show today, right? We covered a lot of ground in regard to FaZe's recent loss in LA, how that affects their mentality moving forward, how these COVID-19 has affected the league and the precaution that needs to take place, along with the steps that also could follow suit. But we'll see you all same time, same place, right here on EnvyTV Friday, following Contested at 5 p.m. Central Time. Take it easy, folks. Stay safe and enjoy your week.